Right. What's up, Mark?
Hey Mark, how's it going? Looking good today.
Hey, we go to the same barber, right? Hey man, I know I start every episode by saying this, but I'm really excited to talk to you. You are a dude. I'm gonna give you like the most flavor flav of introductions right now. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and that's not like
Likewise.
bullshit. I've really followed your work on LinkedIn. We've known people that are connected. Um, you again setting the stage here because there is a wide range of people that are going to listen to this, business leaders, marketing and sales leaders. My aunt Cindy and Terry on the East Coast, they listen to it as well. But for folks that need to know who Mark King is, you are a human-centered designer. You are a design thinker. And what that means is everything you do is starting with empathy and focusing on people, their needs, the experiences we're trying to build for them. And then you create what they need. And you've done this for profit, nonprofit. You have your own company where you've created products. You've literally spent a whole life, helping people, building things that help make people's lives and experiences better. And I think that is awesome. And I can't wait to talk about it. Did I do that justice?
That was great. Better than I could have done.
Hey, come on, man. We connected recently. Well, let's go back. I threw you one of my random crazy LinkedIn messages probably years ago where I was like, hey, I'm Mark also. We're
I
both
think
in
you even
Chicago.
called me. I was like, who is
On
this
the
guy?
phone, I called you.
Yeah.
I sounds like something I would do, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, okay. So I called you out of the blue and was like, hey, you seem really cool. Is there something we can do? And the reason I did that is because I'm always intrigued and inspired by people that um, they move creatively but strategically. And I noticed that's what you were doing. And I think maybe a good place to start is I think when I first came into your world, it was when I first became aware of Toad and Tadpole, which is your company. So number one, welcome to the show. Number two, tell people about Toad and Tadpole and how this came to be, because I think the story's just amazing.
Cool. Well, and thank you to start out. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. And also, like, the more I hear about you, the more I learn about you, the more I'm impressed of what you've done. So I'm very pleased and honored to be here. I started Toad and Tadpole a number of years ago. I'll go into all the details.
Bring it.
When my daughter, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and when she was not quite three, divorce broke apart our family. And I didn't get to see her very much. And um, being with my kids, being a part of my kids' lives, and helping them grow into adults, is something that is and always has been really important to me. I was very close with my mom. She was a nurturer, and I think a lot of that with my mom and my grandma and whole family. I think it sort of got passed down to me, and
Hmm.
so I wasn't getting to see my daughter as much, and it was really hard. She was 3 years old, and like, I don't know if you've ever tried to talk on phone with a 3 year old. It's hard.
It's not easy.
uh,
Brother, I've been there, man.
so, so I was looking for a couple of different things. When I was when I did see her every other weekend, I was trying to make the most of those weekends. And coming from the background that I do, as you said, like, I kind of look at everything as a design problem. There's the super basic framework that everybody knows of, like, desirable, feasible, and viable. I was thinking about everything that way, and I still think about everything that way. Of like,
I'm giving you a
what?
hug right now. I'm giving you a hug. I literally was journaling this morning, literally writing about how the definition of innovation is desirability, feasibility, and viability. Oh my God, we are so aligned. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No, all good. But so I was thinking about, like, what do we want to do? What does she want to do? What can I do? Like, viability wise, money wise, like, I don't have very much money, and I need to figure out how to make the most out of the money that we have. This isn't just about buying
Mm.
gifts. This is about, how do we make the most of our time? And then feasibility, like, what can I do? What am I able to do? And like, I did so many things that, like, sometimes when I look back on my photos, and I've forgotten about things that I did, of like, I think it was her third birthday. And I was like, her gift is going to be that I'm going to fill up her room with balloons. So that was like a $8 thing and a
Yeah.
bunch of hours and lots of, hurting fingers and blisters and stuff. But
Yeah.
I put like 300 balloons in her bedroom. Or like another year, I took like a corner of the house and painted it in chalkboard paint so that like there could be, she could draw on the wall in the kitchen like while I was cooking dinner or whatever, so that we could all be in the same space together. And then I wrapped it. I took huge pieces of wrapping paper and put them on the wall so that like she could unwrap the corner of the wall.
Dude,
And
we are
so
like the same person, dude. This is crazy, man. What, dude? I'm real talk. Like when I got divorced, I did the same thing. I was like, dude, I got no money. How do I create these experiences that are memorable and special? And one thing I did, I was at Kinko's. I was going to run a workshop. I was picking up like some worksheets I was making, and I was like, "What's that big printer?" And the guy's like, "Oh, that's like our blueprint
plotter.
printer." Yeah. And so I was like, "Can you print anything on that?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "If I just send you a picture, can you print it?" So in black and white, I got like 4-foot wide pictures. They're of my kids. They're right back there. And I printed like 20 of them out. I put them on the ground with paint. I was like, paint them. And that was the art in our apartment for like a year. We are
Yeah.
like, dude, this is the same thing. So I'm
I
sorry.
as a
You're making experiences.
white elephant gift one year, it was a $20 maximum, and I figured out that like the cost on the plotter to get like a full size poster of myself in black and white was around $20. So as a white elephant gift, I took a picture of myself and got it printed at Kinko's on the platter. Somebody
Are you
got that.
kidding me? Dude, on my parents' refrigerator at their house right now is a plotter. It's like 3 feet tall. It's just my head. It is
Yeah,
on the refrigerator. Dude, this is crazy. We do the
that's
same
funny.
crazy shit.
I
Okay,
know.
so go back. Going through divorce, trying to make great experiences for your daughter, low on
Yeah.
money, but you're trying to create this great experience for her.
Yeah, and I had this realization as we would do things. Like we went to a sushi restaurant one time, and she was interested in a lot of the things of she was like interested in the history of the sushi. She was interested in like what was in it, what are the ingredients, and they're like they did absolutely nothing. And so I kept having these little moments of like, would it like if the sushi restaurant would have created an experience not just for her, not just like giving her a paper menu that was for her to like go down on and like color on, but something that was for all of us. That was a way to connect all of us. She would have been
Mm-hmm.
begging us to go there every week. She would be like, let's go get sushi because it's fun. And they like, and I would be like, yeah, that's great. Like, let's go. Like, this is a worthwhile experience. This is a place to spend my money. So I kept having these little moments. I had another moment where we were skiing. I had taken her skiing when she was like 4 and little, and I could like put her between my legs.
Yeah,
Um, but she was like 8, and like a 4-year-old teaching a 4-year-old to ski and teaching an 8-year-old to ski are different situations.
totally,
And
totally.
we were coming down, and she was having a hard time, and I was having a hard time. We were both on the verge of tears, maybe not even, maybe past the verge. And the ski instructor came by us, and he's like, "Do you mind if I like step in for a sec?" I was like, "Go ahead." And
Please.
at that moment, I instead of like getting my phone out and being like checking my email or whatever, I watched what he was doing, and I was like, okay, now I've got some tips. Now I know what I can do with her. And I started, so
Mm-hmm.
that started to think about things like, I know how to ski. I know how to play a little bit of music. I know how to speak other languages. I know how to swim. But like we farm these lessons out to other people. Like we send our kids to swim lessons. I know how to swim. What I don't know is how to teach someone how to
Teach
swim.
right.
And
Totally
so,
different skill
I
set.
started to think about like, what if I was taking the swim lessons? what if I was, oh my gosh, what just happened there?
Whoa, Zoom automatic or Riverside automatic. That's so cool.
What if I was taking the ski lessons, not about how to ski, but how to teach someone else how to ski? And so I was having all these moments, and I was like, there's this whole group of experiences and products and stuff that are designed for the kids. Ski school designed for the kids, the restaurant menu designed for the kids, but I'm there also, or I could be there also. And like, how could there be shared products, shared experiences, shared services for us together, and realize that there wasn't a whole lot out there. Disney does a good job. Pixar, especially. Pixar is a great example. Pixar is a great example of a lot of things, but they're a great example of movies that are equally enjoyable by adults and kids, not necessarily for the same reason, but everybody gets it.
100%, dude.
And so I went down this pathway. I actually quit my job when so I got married again. My wife was like 5 months pregnant. I quit my job to follow this. Since then, so that summer, I had this idea, and it sort of came out of nowhere. But so this was a part of me trying to connect with my daughter, who was, I guess, 7 at the time, still not great talking on the phone. And I was trying to think of like, how could we feel like we are more together when we're not together? And started thinking about things like, well, could there be like a kid's version of FaceTime or whatever? And I was like, no, like there's so much technology out there. This isn't about technology. I get technology. I appreciate technology. I just don't like to start with technology. I like to add technology where it's appropriate, rather than starting with like, okay, we have a technological solution. How do we make it work? And so I had this idea for like, well, what if there were like stuffed animals that held hands, and you could have like, when you're together, the stuffed animals could be together, and when you were apart, you could each take one half, like one of the stuffed animals, and like give it a squeeze or whatever when you're feeling lonely, when you're going to bed at night, both the parents and the kids. I found like all these studies of like how many adults sleep with stuffed animals, and it's a surprising number. And
this is good research. This is good research.
Yeah, and I get it. And honest to God, across the street from where we lived, at like, the not great restaurant, it was fine, but it was like the place that we went because it was across the street. It was like, I don't feel like cooking tonight, let's go across the street. And sitting there, and at the table next to us, there's a couple talking about otters, and how otters like cuddle up with each other when they sleep so they don't float away from each other. And I'm like, that's it. That's it.
Don't float away. Don't let my kid float away. Yeah.
So we made otters.
So cool.
These are otters. They have snaps on their hands, so they can be together. Snaps. Everybody, when I was having them made, was like, well, what do you think about magnets? And I was like, yeah, magnets, that would be great. But I wanted them to be suitable from birth. So they are safety tested to be suitable from birth. Magnets cause trouble for kids. Snaps are on clothing and lots of things that kids have. So figured that would be safe. It is indeed safe. So started that on the side. We have a bunch of them. Always looking for ways to get those into the hands of the people who need them. Both in like
you had some interesting like use cases. You talked about how, again, it kind of speaks to like the human-centered nature of this, where like you created this thing because you and your daughter were having this very unique experience where you were apart, and you wanted a way that you can let her know you were still there when you weren't in the room and in the house, right? And this was a thing you created that like got to the core of that experience. And then as we were talking earlier, you said, there's, you know, it's not just divorced parents that get separated from their kids. There's humanitarian efforts, you know, where parents and children are separated. There's military deployments where parents are gone for months at a time. There's all these instances where a parent and their child are separated, where Toad and Tadpole can serve a really, really, it's almost like a gap that not many other things have been designed specifically to serve, right?
Right.
And so, again, if folks are listening, if you are like Julie Smolansky, if you're listening, I know you do a lot of humanitarian work. Jenny, if you're listening, Bunker Labs and all of my veteran network, get in touch with Marc, because I know that people that listen in our networks, we can connect the dots and get these into the hands of the children and the parents that have to be separated for whatever reason. And this could be a thing that kind of helps. It's not even ease the burden. It does more than ease the burden. It actually is the comfort, right? It's not a
So
Band-Aid. It's actually makes a better experience.
One of the examples that I've gotten very excited about, and I don't know what to do about. Excited is a tough word. It maybe isn't quite the right word, but I am excited about the opportunity of helping. Was when the situation in Ukraine started, and I have a couple of nonprofit crushes, and one of them is World Central Kitchen by Jose Andres. And what their organization does is they went into Ukraine and they go into lots of other places where there are issues, and they serve meals, and they're providing a functional service. And the thought was, there needs to be an emotional service also. And not to say that there aren't, but the idea of getting 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 otters into Ukraine to help the families that are being split apart it feels like there's a need and there's a solution. I want to connect those things.
I just wrote on my whiteboard the name of somebody. We'll talk after this, but somebody that might help for sure.
Another organization that I think is doing great stuff and has a similar model as World Central Kitchen is Team Rubicon, and they do similar types of going into places that need help. Oftentimes natural disaster areas, and they have, Team Rubicon US and global, and but the model of unfortunately these things continue to happen, and we can't stop those things from happening, but what we can do, well, I'm not going to get into that, but
right.
But we can help the reaction. We can help the people afterwards, and at least that's what I feel like I can do. So that's one of my biggest goals with these things. And that's not to say that there aren't everyday situations. But so that's why one of the reasons I decided to create these was because I realized that we weren't alone. And it wasn't just, like you said, people in divorce situations. It's mom or dad travels a lot for work, and feel apart, and you can take pictures and send them back and forth of here's the otter on the plane, here's the otter in the hotel room, here's Big Ben, here's whatever. Or it's kids having separation anxiety going to school when they're little, and you put the otter in the backpack. Another thing that's cool about these things is that because their hands snap together, so you can put them around things. You can put them around a backpack strap. You can put them on a crib railing. You can do simple things like that remind the children that the parents are not too far away. One of the things that I've noticed is that they are, if not equally, probably more helpful for the adults. That the adults really see the value. Which I understand. To kids, this is maybe, it sort of feels like another just another stuffed animal that I have. I'm realizing how much I like these colors.
I'm seeing some branding going on there, man. You're on brand.
Totally unintentional. But it's the adults that the adults need a little squeeze. You drop your kid off at preschool and you walk out and they were in tears, and like it's really hard to walk away, and it's like,
Yeah.
I have them with me. Also great for grandparents and aunts and uncles and family members that are far away. And so this is what I hope will be one thing of many. I have a spreadsheet of tons of ideas of things that I could do or things that I could help others do to create situations where adults and kids are having shared experiences.
You know, there's a few things there. One is like when you were talking about like, the issue in Ukraine, right? And these humanitarian efforts, it's like, and I think it's important to say, you're not working to solve that, right? Like we're working to manage it. It's like I'm a diabetic. I'm type 1 diabetic. And I once heard somebody at a company say, we're not working to cure diabetes. We're working to manage it. And that's really important, right? And I think that something that occurs when you are working in that part of it is that it kind of opens up the funnel of a possibility, right? I think what's the most important thing I hope people take away from your story about Toad and Tadpole is that is folks that don't consider design, is folks that don't maybe think about the world the way that like some people see it, is you just see they see stuff, right? You see why the stuff needs to be there. And like that story about how Toad and Tadpole came to be, it's like, it's not like, oh, Marc's a toy designer, because he's not, right? No. It's not like Marc is a children's psychologist. He's not. He is, you dug deep into the core of the human experience, the pain, the empathy, the desires, the challenges, the motivations. And you're like, where can we absolve challenge? Where can we lean into desires? Where can we create and make something better? And it wasn't like, let's make a toy. The toy was the last thing, right? It was like there's probably a million other things that came, but it could have easily been anything else. But the toy came out of all the hard work. It's like I tell people, it's like 80% of the work is like you're doing now. It's just the research. It's the learning. It's the empathy. And it isn't until the end that you're like, oh, here's the solution. Whereas other people think it's like, oh, I got a solution for the problem. Here it is. It's like, no. And Marc, I know in addition to Toad and Tadpole, you've done a lot of other things. You've worked at big companies, nonprofits. You've brought this mindset, this value, this skill to lots of different places. Now in your career, you're kind of venturing off on this new kind of like green field space. I know that folks that listen to this can hear what you're saying and be like, I need a guy like that in my life, right? Maybe they got a company, maybe they're not. Like, number one, reach out to Marc. If you're listening to this, like,
sure.
Name is Marc King, Marc with a K. Find him on LinkedIn, find him on the internet, send him an email. Just find this guy because he's the right one. But one, you're kind of like this mindset of empathy and creativity and optimism. It opens you up to kind of anything. It like spans across industries. And so my question for you is, how do you feel being that maybe let me ask you this way. Seth Godin talks about people being a meaningful specific or a wandering generalist. And maybe folks from the outside look at us and say, they're wandering generalists because they can help in healthcare and they can help in education or they can help with it. Where do you see yourself? Are you a meaningful specific or a wandering generalist? And what do you think about that?
So I've been thinking a lot about this. So as I so I as you said, I'm thinking about what's next. For the past almost 20 years now, I've been consulting in human-centered design thinking. This is not my background. In college, I didn't know who or what I wanted to be. I didn't know what was out there. I went to a liberal arts college because it was just like, well, this sort of path of least resistance.
Mhm.
Ended up with a humanities degree. I majored in humanities because I didn't know. And I ended up with a concentration in like ancient history and languages. So
Oof,
yeah,
oof.
yeah.
That's a thing.
I studied ancient Greek for 7 years.
Oh my
The
gosh.
the last time that I studied it, where I was like, "This is too much," was I was studying in Switzerland and was taking Greek and French, and I didn't really speak French, and I was just like, "I can't do this anymore."
Wow.
But so French and Greek and Latin and ancient history, just sort of by default. And got out of school, and what I say about myself at that point is that I was prepared for everything and nothing at the same time. I was the generalist of like, I had philosophy was also in there. Like I'd studied a lot of philosophy and started to want to understand like how and why we think the way we do, and what influences people, and how people have tried to like codify that, and they all think that they're the best ones at codifying that. And uh Sort of for a few years just sort of like swam around, had a few jobs, like worked in restaurants, worked at a company that sold tours, like private custom tours to Italy, and ended up doing things like I totally untrained to do this. Ended up like having to manage the brochure in Quark Express. I don't know. I didn't know what Quark was, but I figured it out. Having to manage the
Whoa.
website in Dreamweaver. I didn't know anything about doing that, but I figured it out. And so I started to be making some things, plus this philosophy background, and I came upon design thinking. IDEO is the company that has launched a million careers. I came across a case study of theirs about the mandolin vegetable slicer, and about how they had taken it from being a something that was useful but dangerous, and you wouldn't want it on the counter, and you wouldn't want your kids to use it, to being something that you would be proud to have out on your counter and is safe, and it keeps that same utility. And I was like, that's what I want to do.
Dude,
So
this is another thing where you and I have the same path, man. I literally, I think it might have been like 2000, it would have been 2003, maybe 2005. I found
yeah,
IDEO produced a thing called Design Thinking for Educators. It was a
yep,
PDF. I just had, oh, hold on a sec. I froze, bro. Give me one sec. There we go.
okay.
I just came across, it was like a PDF, IDEO, Design Thinking for Educators. And I was like, what is this? I feel like I've been doing it my whole life, but didn't know it had a name. And then I was like all in. So you discovered IDEO's case study just like on the web somewhere or what?
Yeah, yeah. Somebody had like pointed me in their direction,
Dude.
and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll take a look." And I was like, whoa. So I thought I wanted to be a product designer. I did a bunch of informational interviews, looked at schools, found that the Institute of Design is right here in Chicago. I didn't even have to leave Chicago, and
Yeah.
it's like one of the best schools for design. What I was hoping to do, and like the human-centered part of it, which I didn't have all the words for at the time, but like that's what it was. Um, uh, got in. It was the only place I applied to, and I was really nervous. I remember going to like an open house and talking to somebody and being like, I don't, I'm just crossing my fingers I'll get in. And they're like, after talking to them, they're like, you're gonna get it. Like, I think you're okay. And so I went there.
Dude.
I full time for 3 years.
Who you were there with? Are there folks like in our world? Who were some of your buddies from that cohort from that time? Who are some names I might know?
Jeremy Dumb, Clint Barth, Sarah Cantor was a couple years ahead of
Oh,
me.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Wow. Wow, man.
I
This is a
mean,
good world to be in.
yeah, I mean, I was there. Chris Conley was still running the product design track. Um, they were. It was. I think it was a. It was a great time to be there.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, folks that are listening, Aunt Terry, Aunt Cindy, you hear this. These names might not mean anything to you, but these are the Michael Jordans and Scottie Pippens of the industry, right? These are the Wayne Gretzky's. These are the Tom Brady's. These are the people that took ideas, gave it life, gave it formality, gave it process, wrote it down, shared it, and spread the gospel
yeah,
to
I
really
mean,
allow.
Larry Keeley
Yeah.
was, I had him as a professor, and
Wow.
like really changed the way I thought about a lot of things. Kathleen Brandenburg was she is one of the people who runs IA Collaborative, which I ended up working at. She taught an intro to design class in my first year, and like the idea of like the desirable, feasible, viable blew my mind.
So simple, so impact. Still, I literally gave a talk like a month ago. Still use that slide, right?
Yeah,
Still have to be like, folks don't know. And so all of this, it's interesting. People talk about, I think Tim Brown, the guy from IDEO,
yeah,
T-shaped people, right? Oh, I'm
yep,
a biologist, but now I want to be an architect. But now I want to be an entrepreneur. But now I want to be a whatever. Your career and your learning. Well, I think also you talked about how your family, your mother, your grandmother, they were nurturers, and that you kind of
yep,
inherited that. You had this background. Your collegiate studies were more open. It was around things like, like you said, philosophy and language. It was things that really enticed the mind. And probably, if I think about it, it's both right and left brain kind of stuff, right? It's not just
yeah.
like binary numbers and letters. It's a little bit of art and science, and then you
Well,
find
and
this methodology.
I went and decided to go live in Switzerland and study in French. I'd taken 1 year of college French, and was like, I'm gonna go do this. Um, I mean, I see that as a both sides of the brain. I was not sitting there reading a book and memorizing vocabulary. I was
Mm-hmm.
going to the Migros and the supermarket and seeing the words and making the connection like, oh, myrtille, that's blueberries. Like, and so it just became a part of me rather than, the sitting down and studying. But yeah, so um Institute of Design, 3 years. Worked at uh a few design companies, IA Collaborative, Greater Good Studio, um, and um, and then for the past like 9 years, on my own and with a business partner for a time, and I've worked in, I've done projects in almost everything, any industry you can think of. One of the things that I have been doing, so I also on Thursdays, I basically teach a class. I teach a class through an organization, a nonprofit called Raven, and they help college students who come from who are first generation college students, or who come from underserved backgrounds, to be career ready once they graduate from college. And so I
Interesting.
help teach a class. I have a group of 10 students from City College of New York. And they're going through the same thing I am, where they're
Where
like
do I
thinking
go?
about
What
who
do
they
I
want to
do?
be. They're getting their resume together. They're getting all of these things together. And like, on the one hand, I want to show that like my expertise, but also like empathize with them. Like, I'm not in that different of a position than you are. And one of the things that I've realized, and as I'm talking with people in networking, is that like in some ways I've gained a lot more expertise in a lot of different areas, and I have this the vertical of my T is the human centered design,
Mm-hmm.
and my horizontals are a lot of things, including all of the industries that I've worked in. I don't have the vertical in a sector, in an industry. If it would be anything, it would be
Got it.
probably care. I've done tons of healthcare work. But as I'm trying to um, create a new job, a new position, and get somebody to hire me for that position, whenever I've ever talked with people about kind of their career journey and what they're thinking, one of the things that I always recommend is to think of who you want to be and what you want to do, and then find a company that will hire you to do that, rather than looking to see the jobs that are out there and seeing if you fit. Like, there's going to be some of that both ways, but like how important it is to identify what you want to do. And as I'm talking with people and explaining to them what I want to do and how I think I could be value to them, they're like, well, but do you have expertise in my sector? And I'm like, no. And so like I'm in a similar position as I was when I graduated from college, where like I'm an expert in everything and nothing at the same time. And so I'm sort of
which is valuable. Yeah, but that's valuable, right? Like,
totally.
it's interesting. The question was, are you meaningful specific or a wandering generalist?
Yes. Sorry, that was both. A really long.
No, but that's a beautiful way to set it up, because now you hear the story and it almost nullifies the question, to be honest, because maybe the thinking of being you can only be binary, a meaningful specific or a wandering generalist, maybe that's not the way we think about it, right? You could be a wandering specific, right? Like, your specific skill set is creating, developing empathy, creating amazing experiences and solutions for really human-centered challenges, right? That's the specificity. The wandering nature could be healthcare, could be office and furniture design, it could be, education, it could be anything. It's as you go through life, and I know we've talked, a few weeks ago, and I know you're kind of on the circuit right now. You're talking to as many people as you can as you're designing this role for yourself.
I'm doing the research phase of the design.
Yeah. I'm curious because it's like, I remember there were times where, I worked in public education right out of college. Right. I was a Chicago public school teacher, and then like different work started occurring. I started consulting, and then I was doing like curriculum design, and then I was full-time design thinking consulting. And sometimes I'd go somewhere and be like, my folks would be there and their friends would be like, oh, you're the teacher, right? And it was just easier to be like, yeah, yes, that's me, rather than try, because like someone's like, wait, what? I don't get what you do. You're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not an EMT. It's not one of those things that most people know. So as you're having these conversations, like, give me a percentage. How many people understand or see and can internalize like what the value is, versus people that are like, wait, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand it. Do more people get it than not nowadays?
Yes. That is the short answer. The longer answer is, as I talk with them about what I want to do, it's a lot easier to have conversations with the people who understand on a deeper level what I do, because then I don't have to explain that part and then explain how I want to use it. So for the people so say somebody who has worked on a project at the kind of maybe the minimum, or has read extensively about it, or has worked with a company as consultants or whatever, worked on a project somehow related to this, where they start to understand the mindset and the tools. I always come back to those two things: is there's a human-centered mindset, and there are tools of like, how do you make sense of all of what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. And the people who are more familiar with the mindset and the tools, we can start the conversation later. Like we can move past that and get to like, oh, okay, interesting. Like, I was talking with somebody a few weeks ago that I used to work with, and it was almost like, because he got that first part, I could just move on to like, he was almost like finishing my sentences, because as I started to introduce something, he was like, oh, what you're talking about is, this. But I would say not just with the people that I'm talking with now, but an observation of the industry is that I think that there was a time where this skill set was considered an outside capability that we needed to bring people in to do. Let's take that to like 7, 8 years ago, and it was more common that companies were bringing those people who used to be consultants, they were bringing them in-house, and they were setting
In-house,
up
yeah.
design studios within the organization. What I see now is it's more of a skill that they want their teams to have, and their whatever team it might be. And so how I've adapted how I work with teams is, it used to be company would come, they would say, here's a project, we'd have a kickoff meeting, and then we wouldn't see each other for like 2, 3 months, and we'd come back with a final presentation and like cross our fingers that it was what they wanted. Over time, teams wanted to be more involved and contribute to writing discussion guides and seeing the video from the research and participating in concepting sessions. And seeing it as not only as an opportunity for differentiation, but also as a way to be a more effective consultant, was to work with teams rather than working for them. So instead of dropping off the brief and we'll see you later, it was, we're going to have that kickoff meeting, and you're going to write
Right.
the discussion guide. I'll help you do it because I've done it a million times, but you're going to do it. We're going to go out and do research together. If we're going to interview 15 people, I'll do the first 5, you'll do the next 10, and I'll still be in the room and make sure that, you're okay. And I'll be with you afterwards and we can discuss, but like, you're going to do it. You need to be responsible for this. You're the one who works at the company all day, every day. I don't. I'm coming in with this mindset. And so I started like almost becoming a teacher or a coach or a trainer.
Yeah. But
Which is
that's
something
now
that I would much
long-term
rather be.
habits. I think what's really
Yeah.
interesting about that is, like, as you said, as you're talking about this, the analogy I think is like, we go to the doctor and we say, hey, doctor, am I healthy? Say, no, you need to do these things, come back in whatever months. Well,
Yeah.
what happens to 99.9% of the population? They leave the doctor's office, they forget what they're supposed to do, they don't do it, and they're back there in 3 months or they're dead. But like, what if your doctor came home with you? And
Yep.
what if he was with you 3 days a week? Like, you would see long-term longitudinal growth and impact and positive impact. And I think, as you said, where people used to take these people as consultants and say, here, just do it. Now they're like,
Yep.
hey, we kind of want this in-house. It's like the skill set and the tools and the mindset is now starting to get embedded into the people that are doing all the work. So if you've got all these different teams that have this unique skill set, mindset, and tool set, that's a really powerful thing, rather than having a team of consultants come in and then they're gone in 8 months.
Yeah. And one of the first places I witnessed that, I did a project at Northern Trust, and they had one of these teams that was focused on bigger projects. And I think they were saying that they could do like 8 projects a year. And it was a small amount, and they focused their projects on the bigger things that you would need somebody who had more expertise to understand the context and situation and figure out how to do it and how to move it forward. But they were getting requests from lots of people across the organization for, I'm trying to create a dashboard. Can you help us create a dashboard? And they would say, well, that's not large enough for us to take on as our group, but what we're going to do is we're going to come train you and show you how to do it yourself. And I was like, oh, so smart. It's so smart. So that kind of thinking and tools is getting embedded throughout the organization rather than it being held just inside this group.
What's the quote about, it's like knowledge is not a hamburger? You ever
Oh,
hear
no.
that? It's like if I have a hamburger and I give you a bite, there's less hamburger for me. That's not what knowledge is. Knowledge is not a hamburger. I can give you some knowledge and I still have some for me. And there's it's an infinite amount, right? It doesn't just because you share it. It's actually when you share your knowledge cheeseburger, it grows, it gets better. And I feel
It
like
gets better.
that's
Yeah.
kind of like this thread that I'm seeing throughout your career, is that whether it's through designing physical things and experiences through Toad and Tadpole, the work you've done throughout healthcare, what you're doing now, like designing this job to help teach people and to help organizations just create, again, like human-centered, really great experiences. This whole thing is like teaching people and sharing this knowledge cheeseburger that you have, for lack of a, I always should say, I think I should on LinkedIn should just say like the king of bad metaphors. That's always like my self
I think
handicap.
it's
Like
great.
before I say this, also, I just want to call it out. It's been in my head. I feel like you are the Coca-Cola version, and I'm like the RC Cola. I'm not even like Pepsi or like, I'm like the RC Cola version. Like you went to like IIT. I schmoozed my way in IIT. I got this I got a degree. I'm technically an alumni of IIT.
I
Because
didn't
when
know
I was
that.
a teacher, they were running this pilot program to give like a teaching master's degree. They're like, dude, it'll take like a year and a half and it'll cost like $5,000. I'm like, I'm in. Somehow
Yeah.
I got in. And yes. So, yeah. So, but again, like folks that are listening, folks that are watching, this is not, I've been thinking so much lately about creativity, Mark. And I think that like the big things that are starting to jump out at me as we talk is that, okay, one, people used to think of creativity as like a luxury, as a nice to have, right? And we realize it is essential. It is essential to human movement forward. It is essential to make things better. And then
And
two
if I
is
could
that,
build on that before you take your
yeah,
next
yeah,
point, I it's cliche, but I go back to this. Again, it's a quote that I'm probably going to mess up, but necessity is the mother of invention. And I think it's always
yes.
attributed to Albert Einstein, but I don't think he ever really said it. I don't know. Look it up, listeners. But that's what I do, is I understand what the necessity is. And then the creativity sometimes comes in understanding what the necessity is, but then it's as simple as thinking of as many different options to that necessity as possible. That's what creativity is to me. And so there is a from to, there is some logic in there, but then the creativity opens up when you start to think about what the possibilities are, and not just the same things that already exist, or like how could I make something that we've already done, or how can I make something that somebody else has already done happen. It's like innovation is about useful utility. It's about utility, and and that there's a need, and that you're putting
Yes.
something new in that situation. And
Yeah.
that's where the creativity like really lies. And because
Yeah.
I have never viewed myself as a creative person, but if I think of it this way, one of my aunts said to me one time, she's like, we're really going to need your help with this thing that we're dealing with because you think differently. I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, yes, you do.
They should have a podcast named Think Differently. They should do
Think
that. That'd be
differently.
awesome. The other thing, and well, yes, and so this mindset of creativity, of again, not just being creative for creative sake, but seeing a need, creating something that meets that need and makes things better for people. I think what folks are starting to see, and I think you validated it with what you said earlier, is that it is just as much a trained, a learned, an assessed, a practice, a profession as is like brain surgery, right? So it's like I again, maybe I'm just projecting, but like I love street art, right? But I think when people see graffiti on the trains, they probably just think somebody just like walked up and was like, oh, I'm just going to do this. But there is practice, there is art, there is structure, there are do's and don'ts, there's taxonomy, there's a whole system of graffiti. But people that
And the whole
might be able to say, oh, that's colorful.
subculture.
That,
Yeah.
yes, 100%. And so I think, again, like for folks that are listening, is like, whether you sit in a cubicle all day crunching numbers, whether you work at home and you are doing X, Y, or Z, there is always a way that things can be better. Better being defined as what is a need that is not being met and is causing you pain or challenge. There's a way to make it better, right? I like when people say, well, we've just always done it that way. It's like, get the fuck out of that organization now, because there's a way to make it better.
One of the analogies that I often use for this way of thinking and tools is, and I hate to go back to that framework again, but it's so basic and powerful, is about gift giving. It happens to be my 10th anniversary with my wife today. And I looked it up.
Happy anniversary today. Why are you here, dude?
She's at work and
okay. All right.
We have plans tonight if the kids aren't sick, which they
all
right. But giving gifts is, you can think about the desirability, viability, feasibility. What does somebody want? Like, so putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, what does that person want?
Love this.
Viability, how much money do I have? How much money do I want to spend on this? And feasibility, like, can I get it? Can I make it? Can Amazon get it to me on time? Like, am I too late?
Totally.
And like, you're coordinating all these things. And so as I was thinking about anniversary gift, like not wanting it to be like wanting it to be meaningful, sort of as I was talking about gifts before, meaningful but not necessarily expensive. I looked it up and it's like 10-year anniversary is I think aluminum and tin. And I was like, I went down like the regular track of like what can I get that's made out of aluminum or tin, or like can I find a necklace that's made out of aluminum or tin, or can I find like, can I make something out of tinfoil? Like, that's where I started to be like,
I'm going to write on my board right now what I think it might be, and then we'll see if I was right.
This is where I started to think a little differently of what the possibilities were. And this is what I mean about creativity, is like, yes, it is a profession. Yes, it is a skill set and tools and all of that, but it's like, it's just a mindset in so many ways. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna get some tins, like Altoid tins, and fill them with things that are meaningful. So that it doesn't have to be the metal necklace that is like, you go to any website, it's like, what are 10th anniversary gifts?
10th anniversary.
It's like, it gives you the same stuff, and you start to think about like what might be possible and how that then impacts the desirability and how you could create something different and new. And like, I don't really want to call it innovative, but like if you take my definition of innovative, which is something,
it is
useful and new, that has the useful being like something that is desirable, like it is. And so I first had in my cart 40 tins, and then I was like, I'm not gonna be able to.
Dude, we are very similar in that way. There's no Grateful Dead lyric. It says, too much of anything is just enough. And I've used to be like, yes. And I'm like, yeah, tone it down a little bit.
Yeah. And so that's my creativity. That's how I make meaning. That's how.
Yeah, but structure, right? There's a structure to it. There's a way. It's not just happenstance. There's a structure to it. Marc, man, as we start to wrap it up here, man, again, you are in the phase of designing your kind of dream job right now, based on this just amazing career that you've had, creating amazing products, services, and experiences based on humans' needs. we talked earlier, and I think when we first talked a few weeks ago, we're like, you're on this like research right now. So one
Yeah.
thing it sounds like is folks that are listening, get in touch with Marc. We said follow you on LinkedIn, send you a message, look him up online. I'll put his email in the show notes. But you're kind of into right now, number one, meeting with anybody that might have an interest in kind of in speaking with you about like the things that you're doing. The other
Yeah.
thing to note is that as you're looking and building this thing is like you also can help people, right? So folks that are listening, if you have an idea, if you have a problem, if you work at a company and you are banging your head against the wall because you're like, oh, this is the 10 millionth time we run into the same thing, it's simple. Reach out to Marc, have
Yeah.
a quick Zoom call or a phone call with him, and you can start to talk people through these things. And
Would
again,
love
if
to.
the work comes, great. If not, we just can help people.
Yeah, like whenever I talk with somebody who I feel like has made some time for me, I always end it with like, is there anything that I can do for you? And I always feel a little weird because I'm like, I feel like I have to specify, like, I'm not asking for a job. I just like, do you need any help with anything? Now that you understand a little bit more about me and what the way I think, like, is there anything I can help you with? And I'm genuinely happy to help people whenever and wherever I can. Like I said, these students that I'm mentoring, like one of the first things that we do is a roses and thorns activity. And like one thing that I make sure that they know every week is that those 2 hours that I have with them is a rose for me. Like it's one of the highlights of my week. And yes, please reach out.
I dig it. And so we do, I ask people, what can we help you with? What do you need help with? It sounds like reach out, just
Yeah.
talk to Marc. Marc can figure something out, see if there's an opportunity to help make people's lives a little bit better.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would say that is like, and I did put this in a LinkedIn post some weeks ago, but like after all of my experiences, after introspection, which, always happens with me. I'm a big thinker and a big feeler. And have been really trying to think a lot about like where where the future is. If anybody can help me, the kinds of things that I am interested in learning more about and how I might be able to combine these things. And I've been calling them like the 4 pillars of where I'm trying to go. And the first one is that um, I want to, I'm looking to be doing something that is purposeful. A lot of times, profit and purpose, like they don't always get along, and in some ways they do. I've been working in profit mostly for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the main reasons that I got into human-centered design was because of the purpose. And I feel like I'm at a point in my career where I would like to be doing more with the purpose. The second part is similar to like what I've been doing with clients, what I've been doing with kids, is like I want to be setting up the next generation for success. So
Mm-hmm.
I've done this for a long time. I had a teacher in high school that I thought he was one of the most effective teachers that I had. He was a physics teacher, and he had worked at NASA before, so anything that he was teaching
Whoa.
us as sophomores in high school in physics was like so elementary to him that like he hadn't just learned something from a book and was teaching it, but had real like, lived experience in it. And I feel like I'm at that point also where I want to be sharing how I think and how people can think and work and act similarly. So that could be kids, but it doesn't have to be kids. Like it could be, it certainly could be adults.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be working to build community. I want to see how people can be working together. Can use another story, but like uh, Joe Madden was the manager of the Cubs when they won the World Series and for some years before that. And the story, as I remember it, is that he had come from a town in Pennsylvania whose kind of, I think, racial and socioeconomic situation had flipped. And he had started a, um, a foundation or like a location where he was trying to help people come together. And one of the analogies that he used was a rope. And he talked about how if you have a rope and you have somebody on each side and you're pulling apart on the rope, you're not really going to get anywhere. Or somebody might win, which means that somebody else loses. But what happens when you turn the rope to both going in the same direction? You can go infinitely. And so I think about like how to build community, how to get people to work together. And then the last thing is like joy and like mental and emotional stability and well-being is like, I don't think I'm the person I would love to, but I don't think I'm the person to help solve gun violence. Both because of the situation, but also like I think it's like it would be too hard for me. Like it's too heavy for me because I feel things so deep.
It is.
But ways to build joy that is going to have an impact on people's lives for the positive. Like those are the directions that I'm going and what I'm seeking. And you know, if any of that resonates and you want to talk more, I would love to. So
the 4, right? You're looking for something with purpose. You're looking to share your knowledge to help build the next generation. It could be adults, it could be children. You're looking to build community, and you're looking for something that sparks joy, mental well-being, and goodness for the universe.
You got it.
If you're listening and any of that resonates with you, just email Marc or hit him up on LinkedIn. Tell Marc that Marc sent you, and let's make the world a better place, more creative place together. Thank you for setting up time on your anniversary, your 10th wedding anniversary. Happy anniversary, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for setting up time, man. This was a great conversation. It was really awesome to like finally get this down, memorialized. Our grandchildren will watch it one day. We'll see. But thank you for everything, man. It was a great conversation, dude.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Good stuff, man. All right, brother. Be well.
Thanks, Marc. You too. Have a great weekend.